The final important thing to talk about with calories are trackers. Calorie trackers on the way in and the way out need to be discussed. The main takeaway for calorie trackers is that unfortunately they are very inaccurate. So we'll cover calories in first. There are 4 pitfalls of tracking calories in. The first one is that different cuts of food have different quantities in them. This might seem like a minor thing, but we all know that different cuts of steak have very different body compositions. A fillet steak's much leaner than like a ribeye or a rump. They have different protein and fat content. But even within the same food, if you go to something like bacon, classic back bacon, the fat that's around the edge varies massively from pack to pack. I always try and pick the leaner bacon, but it obviously means that what you're eating isn't consistent. That leads on to the next issue, which is food labels. Food labels, they do get regulated, but they might not be completely accurate. Different laws in different countries in particular will allow food companies more wiggle room or less wiggle room. Even as an example, one thing could be that companies could come around to test their food, a certain product, 400-gram pack of bacon, and say, what is the protein, carbohydrates, and fat and caloric value? And the packs that they're testing on that day, while the food companies they're testing them, they could put forward lean packs of bacon, but all the ones you buy are way fattier. So obviously the nutrition you're eating is actually different to what the nutrition label says. This is an issue that you can't really get around. Food labels are not terrible, and if you eat the same things for long enough, that usually balances out. So if you were to eat packs of bacon for long enough, the chances is that you'll get some that's slightly more fatty than what the label says, slightly less fatty, slightly more calories or less calories than the label says. But if you eat a consistent diet for a long period of time, it will generally balance out. The third pitfall of tracking calories on the way in is apps like MyFitnessPal, calorie trackers. If you search for something like chicken, you'll see that there is a lot of different entries for what chicken is. Now, the entries with a blue tick are maybe a little bit more reliable. That basically means that lots of people have agreed with that entry and used that entry in their tracking. But the entries are actually just entries that people have said. That's why if you search chicken, there'll be like 1,000 different ones. And you'll see that there is actually quite a large variance. And if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what chicken you're eating, it could be any one of them. These different food labels will have said all these different values. And chickens are lean meat. Like there's not a lot of fat to play, but even chicken has variance. If you take something like salmon or like 10% beef, there'll be a bigger variance. It might say up to 50 calories different per 100 grams. That all adds up. We talked about how to gain 23 pounds of muscle in a year, you only need 50 calories per day going into muscle building. These calories do add up. One of the reasons for the variance in the different entries on MyFitnessPal is that certain companies in certain countries can have different regulations attached to them. And there could be somebody who lives in a country where water is added to their meat. We'll take the example of chicken. If somebody's had 30% water added to their chicken, let's say 33 as an easier example, 33% water, only 2/3 of their chicken is normal chicken, and then it's been buffed up with this water, and that water adds no calories. If you then went on MyFitnessPal and clicked that entry, but your chicken had no added water, your chicken will have more protein, but it will also have more calories because that chicken is only tracking 2/3 of the calories for that weight. So if they had 150 grams of chicken and you tracked it like that, actually 100 grams of your chicken has the same weight, has the same calories and protein as theirs, because theirs has had water, 33% water added to it. The fourth and final way that tracking calories in can be particularly hazardous is restaurants. Restaurants do not care about calories. Unless you're going to some dedicated food eating restaurant or pub or something, they're not going to care about the calories. If you get a pub lunch, if you, like I'm in the UK, if you get a Sunday roast, the calories in that can vary massively. You might look on the entries for it and it might say 1,500 calories for a large roast. If they have even 50 mils extra of olive oil, that's 440 calories. That's an extra, instead of 1,500 calories, that's almost 2,000 calories. It's out by huge amounts. And the chef isn't going, I have to measure the exact same amount of oil for every person in case they're tracking calories. They just cook the potatoes in whatever, if they're using goose fat, fats in particular, because they're so energy dense, the differences in them can make huge difference in your tracking for the day. And when eating out in some sort of restaurant or pub, they don't care about calories, and the calories that are stated within their foods can be massively varied. Now, I will say, I'm not promoting fast food, but if you were to eat out in a place like McDonald's, one thing they have got going for them is they make all of their beef, like if you were having a burger, for instance, like a quarter pounder, they've made all of their beef and then they cut it to the exact quarter pound. Then if you have like with cheese, the cheese slice is a set cheese slice. They put very similar lettuce, like they put a bit of ketchup and like gherkins. If they've said a certain calorie amount, it's probably likely to be close because everything is standardized. The buns they buy are standard and set size and mass produced. The burgers that they're making are mass produced. The cheese that they're adding is this mass produced like cheese slices. They're more likely to be consistent. So that is one thing I can say for fast food is if I eat out, I often have like a triple cheeseburger from McDonald's. It says 588 calories on it. I just track it as 600 calories. And it's likely to be close to that. And it might be as high as 650, but I doubt it would be higher than that. I doubt it would be more than 50 calories out because everything, all the ingredients inside it, the bun, the patties, the cheese that's added, it's all standardized. The only difference is maybe the amount of ketchup they put on. And ketchup doesn't contain a huge amount of calories, particularly not when they're adding maybe 10 grams of ketchup, like between 5 and 15 grams. It's a small variance in calories. So that is the one thing I can say for fast food is it is more consistent than eating out in restaurants. Now, for calories out, there are two main pitfalls to tracking calories out. The first one is metabolism guesses, things that guess the calories that you're expending at base. The first thing to say about these is they're often not meaning just the metabolism. When we were talking about the different types of calories expended earlier, they often conflate the metabolism, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and the thermic effect of food. They're not accurate. They're guesses, and some people might find them accurate, but a broken clock is right twice a day. If 10,000 people use some metabolism guesser and it's right for only 1% of them, there's 100 people who have still got the right answer for their metabolism, a close enough right guess for the metabolism. They're not accurate in total. And the second thing to say about trying to track calories out, the main pitfall, the worst thing with tracking calories as a whole, exercise trackers. They are woefully inaccurate. Honestly, appalling. The average exercise tracker has been found to be between 27 and 93% inaccurate, over-reporting calories by that amount. It seems to get less accurate, exercise trackers do, the closer you are to sort of sitting down. So walking and running was found to be on average about 31% inaccurate, and cycling was found to be 52% inaccurate, and then like recumbent bikes and not moving were found up to 93% over reporting calories. That means it's saying you've burnt almost twice as much as you have. And I've experienced with this, hearing people say, oh, I did like a moderate bike ride and I burned for half an hour and I burnt 1,000 calories. That's good. It's like, no, you didn't. You burnt nowhere near 1,000 calories. To burn 1,000 calories in half an hour is hard. And there are these people as well who perpetuate, I guess this is another myth to bust, they'll pick some random number out of the air and say stuff like 15-minute morning workout routine that you do when you wake up burns 1,000 calories in 15 minutes. No, it doesn't. They've just made this number up. It's a load of rubbish. People will then also talk about the epoch or afterburning effect of like HIIT. They'll say, do HIIT cardio and you'll burn more calories all the way through the day. It's not a substantial amount. You burn, with the afterburn effect, you burn roughly 10% of whatever you burnt during the exercise, you burn that extra in your metabolism. So if you do a HIIT workout and you burn 300 calories, you're only going to burn an extra 30 calories in the afterburn effect. It is not a significant amount at all. So yes, these exercise trackers massively over-report how much you're burning. And obviously this leads people to believe that calories in, calories out doesn't work, because they might have looked at a metabolism tracker, they might have looked at an exercise tracker and said, well, my metabolism says I can eat 2,000 calories a day. My exercise tracker said that this run I went on for half an hour, I burnt like 700 calories on. So I should be able to consume 2,700 calories to be at maintenance. I'll eat 2,500 and I should be in a deficit. But that metabolism tracker might have said your metabolism's 2,000 and it means your metabolism plus your NEAT plus your thermic effective food. But it might only be 1,800. And then your exercise that you actually burnt during exercise might not have been 700. It might have been 500. So you've burnt 400 less than you think. So you thought you were going to be in a 200 calorie deficit because you thought you were burning 2,700 and you were going to consume 2,500. Even if you track the 2,500 perfectly, and we've gone through the pitfalls of tracking calories in, even if that was right, your calories out might have actually only been 2,300, 1,800 from your metabolism plus NEAT, plus thermic effective food, and only 500 from exercise. So overall, instead of being in that 200 calorie deficit, you end up being in a 200 calorie surplus. So there's probably a moment of a little bit of doom and gloom. You're thinking there are all these different variables. Tracking calories is hard. Different body compositions. How am I possibly going to know what to do? Well, there are two positive takeaways to take. The first one is, if you have the disposable income, you're serious about it, coaches can guide you through the process. It's not an impossible thing. People obviously know what they're talking about and have made successful transformations in the past. So you can absolutely do it. Every coach will have their method. I'd advise trialing a few coaches, see if you gel with the person, if the way they explain things work, if their sort of methodology behind how their philosophies behind losing weight or gaining muscle, if you agree with them, if you think they've got quality information, go with that coach. The second positive is, even if you're not having a coach, there's information like this online. If you're open-minded, receptive to the information, you seek out good sources of information, and you make implements into your lifestyle, you can make a difference. A little more effort is required because you have to take charge of your own training and dieting, but it's possible. People have done it for ages, and often simplifying things is the way forward. Having said that, I'm now going to move on to my tips for dieting. There are 4 of them. The first is to try and live a consistent lifestyle. What this means is, I have what I call untrackable meals with my clients. That's when somebody goes out to a pub and has a burger, some onion rings and fries, and I often have people send photos to me and they're like, how many calories is in this? I have no idea. If they use a tiny bit extra olive oil, if they use 50 mils extra of olive oil, that's 440 calories extra. Like, I have no idea what they've cooked it in, what type of meat they've used with a burger. It's all minced up. Is it like 10, 15% fat meat? Is it 5% fat meat? it's impossible for me to tell from a picture, even through scale. Like if you're just seeing a plate as well, you have no idea how big this burger is. So the point is, there are meals like that that are untrackable. They're perfectly acceptable. You can have them in your diet. It's important to have some sort of enjoyment in your diet for you to be consistent. But try and minimize them. See if there are alternatives that you could make from home that are consistent. So, one example of a meal that I have that's exceptionally consistent is I have yogurt pots, Skia yogurt pots. I get them at Morrison's, but you can get them at whatever store you can. They're 450 grams, and I know the calories and protein of the whole tub. I don't try and like measure out half a tub and put it with blueberries and stuff. I just eat one tub. I know one tub has just under 40 grams of protein and it has about 320 calories. I'm like, that will do me. I like that. I just have the whole tub. It's very consistent. Every time I eat it, I know I'm eating 450 grams and I just look on the label and it is what it is. I often do that with meals. If I buy a 6-pack of sausages, I'll often just have like 6. That's it. And I put them in 2 bread rolls and that's my meal. If you can have meals that are consistent, you shop at the same places and you have a consistent diet. It becomes much easier to track, and things like I said about nutrition labels being slightly out, over time that'll average. I have a yogurt. I'll probably have at least 4 yogurts per week. That means over a year I'm having over 200 yogurts. On average, whatever the nutrition label says, because I've had it 200 times in a year, it's going to average out to be what they say. The second main tip, and this is probably the most important one, is to diet slowly. You want to make it so that your diet's easy to stick to. So the first main advantage of this is that you don't suddenly get hungry. You're not going to want to eat way more and want to rebound to your normal stage. If you've lowered by like 200, 300 calories, that's perfectly manageable. The other advantage of this is when it comes to things like NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, like we talked about, that drops often. If you diet too harshly, you get a bit zombified and you start not wanting to move and start sort of doing minimal movements and not being alive. That zombification and that drop in NEAT won't happen if you only drop by a small amount of calories. You maintain that small deficit, you lose a bit of fat, you get used to what it feels like in a deficit, you maintain it, you learn the things that you can have, the vices you can have, like maybe a burger every now and again. I mentioned how fast food's maybe a bit more consistent. If you looked at a triple cheeseburger at 600 calories, you could actually track that from restaurants. They are untrackable meals though, so they're harder to track. But if you diet slowly, you're more likely to stick to your diet, and people don't want to because of impatience. The goal that you should always have to achieve your goals is you want to make the minimum change you can that will get you your desired result. So if you want to, particularly with diet, I find this. With muscle building, people can maybe get enthused and start picking up working out because you start getting enthusiastic for it. But if you live your life and your genetic set point is to live life a certain way, the idea that you're suddenly going to be able to start a meal plan that's like, if you normally eat quite a few pizzas and pasta and whatever, maybe that's Italian food, but I have Italian family, so that's immediately what I'm thinking of. Is if you live life that way, telling you to eat like, I don't know, all fish and a rice cake. We've all seen the terrible video, but telling you to eat a really over restrictive, like fitness diet of like chicken, broccoli, and rice, and then you're going to eat cod and a rice cake, and then whatever the generic fitness cookie cutter meal plan is, it's not going to work. You want to make the smallest change you can that's going to get you results. So just put yourself in a small deficit and change over time. And what that does is actually change what your natural set point is. You'll get used to that new way of living, and that becomes your natural set point. And then you can lower your calories again by 300, and that becomes your set point. You can make changes slowly over time. The next main tip I have, which I touched on earlier, is to set separate goals for your like calories during the day and your number of steps per day and your exercise per day. Don't try and conflate them. Don't try and do the track 1,500 calories plus whatever exercise I do, because what you're doing is putting more reliance on the trackers being accurate. And what we've just discussed is they are woefully inaccurate. What's much better is to look at the amount of calories you're eating at the moment, the amount of steps you're doing at the moment, the amount of exercise you're doing at the moment. Track what you normally do and just make changes from there. You don't actually need to know what your metabolism is. You don't ever need to know how many calories you do tracking exactly from your steps or your NEAT. You just sort of go, okay, I've been eating 2,500 calories a day on average. I've been doing 3,000 steps a day on average, and I've been doing 2 lifting sessions per week. What positive changes can I make? If you want to lose weight, it's like, okay, I'm going to lower my calories from 2,500 to 2,200. And that's the only change I'm going to make. And let's see how that goes. And you start with that. Or you could go, okay, I've tried that. I actually found that hard. I'm going to return back to 2,500 calories a day, but I'm going to up my steps per day from 3,000 to 5,000. See how that goes. Make changes based on the way that you've existingly lived your life. You don't actually need to know all the values of these things in the calories in, calories out equation. You don't need to track them all and register them all, because to be honest, they're all constantly fluctuating all the time. Different things affect it. As you build muscle, your metabolism goes up. As you lose fat, your exercise activity thermogenesis and your non-exercise activity thermogenesis will drop because you weigh less. It's more important to just track what you've been living like and make a change from there. You don't need to keep on top of all these other factors. And the final dieting tip that I have, this is the way that I like to track calories, is I would advise making meal banks. This goes into what I said about having a consistent lifestyle, but I created about a meal bank of about 20 meals, 10 of which I eat all the time. About 90% of the meals I eat are one of these 10 meals. It'll be like salmon and rice, chicken and rice, bacon and egg bat, whatever it is. The yogurt pot, I leave that just as a single meal. I just track each meal now because I know what each meal was. So find some sort of consistent way you do the meal. So for my salmon, I buy the 480 gram salmon fillets from Aldi. I split it into 2. So I just track 240 gram per meal of salmon. And then I have an amount of rice that I have pretty consistent. I have it tracked down. I write down the calories of the salmon, the calories of the rice, the calories of the meal as a total. And now when I come to track calories, I don't have to do this like weighing everything out and, oh, how many grams of rice have I put in this? How many grams of salmon for that? If I was to do yogurt and oats, I wouldn't like have to weigh my oats every time and then pull out the yogurt and stuff. I just make things really standardized. It's like I've eaten a yogurt pot. I've eaten my salmon and rice meal. I've eaten whatever I've eaten. I think back at the end of the day and I go, okay, I had this, 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 and this. Great. And I can just write down my meals, or you can just track them as you go along. But it makes tracking much more practical and easy. And particularly, you'll get to know what you crave. Like before training, I'll have a meal like salmon and rice because it has more carbohydrates in the rice. I feel better training under that. In the evening, maybe I'll just have the yogurt. It's a much lower calorie meal. It's still quite dense and heavy, but I can get to sleep fine on it. So yeah, I would advise having set meals in a meal bank. And then once you've created it, you can literally just choose your meals. You know, it comes to breakfast and you go, what do I feel like having? Oh, I feel like this. And it's a standard size meal, and tracking it's really easy. So yeah, that's all my tips for dieting, for manipulating calories. Plus, that was all the information you could possibly want to know about calories. I can't see there being any need to know more than this video's covered. I'm aware that it's probably been a long video and very information dense. If you've stuck around to the end, congratulations, you're dedicated. So yeah, if you have enjoyed what you've seen, if you want to sign up for my coaching services and you like the sound of what you hear, there will be a link in the description to my services. There's also going to be a link to my other social media like Instagram and stuff. And obviously, comment, like, subscribe, all of that good jazz, and have a great day.